All right, we are live. We're going to wait 30 seconds or so to let a few people trickle in. Sometimes it takes some time to log on.
That's right.
It looks like we got a couple
There we
people
go.
coming in. This is the TouchMix webinar. We're going to be talking about recording for about an hour, maybe more, if you're lucky.
Could go a little longer. Fair warning, but it should be fun.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But good morning to everyone. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us at QSC.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My name is Jacob Hunter. I'm the training coordinator and training website manager at QSC. So if you've ever been on the training website and dealt with anything there, you've probably dealt with me at some capacity. I'm going to be moderating the webinar, so I'll be fielding any questions or any technical issues. That being the case, before we do get started, I do want everybody to know that you are free to ask questions. There is a Q&A available. We're not going to have the chat open. It just can get a little chaotic. But if you do have any questions, you can throw it in the Q&A. And if you do have a microphone with you, we can open up your microphone and you can ask your question live to Jason or any of our panelists, and they can kind of chat, and it can be a little more informal that way, and we just want to keep it nice and light like that. But we already got questions coming up, so we'll address those in a second. That's great. Awesome. Thank you for not being shy. We want that. We want people to be involved. But that being the case, I'm going to pass around to a couple of our panelists, people who are going to help us with the subject here. Golden, say hello to everybody.
Hi. How are you guys this morning?
And we got Eric Torres.
Hey guys, Eric over here, application support for QSC. Welcome.
So they're going to be helping us out. They're going to be helping Jason with the topic today. Jason, you want to go ahead and take it away?
Sure. Awesome.
Start the
Thank
show.
you. Well, I am Jason Fernandez, the live sound training specialist for QSC. And as Jacob said, today we're going to be talking about recording, a whole lot of recording. This is a rather dense topic, actually. So this is gonna we're gonna pack this hour in, and it might go slightly over, so I hope everyone's okay with that. But I've got a lot of really cool information for you here. So to record on TouchMix, there's a few different ways you can do this. Probably the primary way, or the method that is available on all three mixers, is recording direct to a hard drive. I'm gonna go ahead and switch some things over here so I can talk about it. Is that showing you? Is this window coming up? Move over. There we go. That's nice. All right. So we have direct to a hard drive recording on all three mixers. This slide here is clearly talking about the TouchMix-30 channel count there, but the 8 and the 16 all do have the ability to record directly to a hard drive, and then this is full multi-track recording and or stereo recording. So any channel you want to be recorded individually, you can do so. You also have the ability to capture just a stereo mix of either your main output or an aux mix at your choosing. So before we get into that, I do want to show you this slide with a whole bunch of information on it. There are some requirements that a hard drive needs to meet to be compatible to be used as a recording drive with TouchMix. And this is some of that information for you. If you need more information on this, we do have a page on our website that outlines all the requirements for a hard drive and offers this same list. So there's a list here that you can see of recommended hard drives that we've tested internally, and we know that they work, and we've qualified them to work as recording drives for the mixer here. So any one of those, well, we know and we're confident that that's going to work. Otherwise, just know that it'll have to be have a relatively high read and write speed, and because of this, we do highly recommend solid state drives as opposed to hard disk drives or spinning drives, and that is because solid state drives inherently just have a much faster read and write speed. They're also a little bit more rugged and can be a little more portable, so they're a really great recording option for you there. Thumb drives, we also do want to kind of mention. Thumb drives can be great to be used with the mixer for storing scenes and presets and firmware updates and things like that. We don't recommend them a lot for recording. If you have, if you're just going to do a stereo recording, or if you have a low channel count recording, it could be fine to use a thumb drive for that. But I would highly recommend that you test it before you actually take it out to your event and use it to record your content there, just to make sure that it works on your own. And the reason for that is, thumb drives are varied in their specs and their capabilities, and there's such a large variety of them out there. It's hard for us to, qualify them essentially. So, word of caution when using thumb drives to record: try it before you go out and do it for real. But there you go. So hard drives. The other thing that you need to be aware of when you're recording is that the hard drive does have to be formatted very specifically to FAT32 format. That's different than exFAT. It's FAT32, FAT32, and so your drive does have to be formatted to this format. Otherwise, it also has to have a USB 3 connection. And if you are going to use a hard disk drive or a spinning hard drive, you'll need to find one that has a 7,200 RPM spin rate. Typically, a hard disk drive has a 5,400 RPM spin rate, and that just won't keep up with the mixer. So you do have to find one that has that faster 7,200 RPM in order for it to be compatible with the mixer. And again, do test it before you actually take it out on a real show and try to make a proper recording. All right, so now we've figured out our drives here. I am going to punch over to my mixer, and I'm going to show you a few things. The first thing I want to show you is actually how to format the drive with the mixer. So good thing about this is, if you don't have a formatting utility, or if you're unsure how to format a drive at all, or specifically to FAT32, the mixer can actually do this for us. So we're going to start with that. I'm going to go ahead and right into my record play screen right here. I'm going to hit that record play. We're going to get into this screen. Now, if you're using a TouchMix-30 Pro and you've just turned it on, or if you're using the default scene, it is going to default itself to this recording mode, which is the DAW mode. We're going to talk about that at the end here. So we're going to need to switch that. And to switch this, I'm going to press this record mode button right here. And I'm going to select multi-track USB drive in the little window that appears. Now, if you're using an 8 or a 16, it will default to USB mode. And it'll look like this. You'll have your recording transport controls at the bottom here, and you'll have a couple of additional buttons on your channel faders up there. These are still the same channel faders that you use in your main mix if I press home there. So they're the same faders, but in the recording screen, we've condensed them, and we've added some more controls to the bottom half of the screen here. Okay, so to get the drive formatted, I'm going to go into my recording setup, which is located in the lower right-hand corner of the screen right here, right next to the main mute button. If I just press that, I get to this screen, and this screen is where I can kind of recall or save or create my USB sessions or my different recording sessions that I'm going to have on my storage device. I can do a couple of other things that we're going to talk about, but to start with, this button right here, Format USB Drive, is what you're going to select when formatting a drive. It's that simple. You'll know that it is formatted because you'll end up getting this default USB session there. So the drive I have in here is formatted. But just to show you in real time, I'm going to go ahead and just reformat. I'm going to press Format USB Drive, and I'm going to get this window here, which is going to let me know that if I proceed with this, it's actually going to permanently delete any information that is currently on the drive. So you will need to be aware of that, whether you're formatting on the mixer or on your computer. Anytime you format a hard drive, it erases the drive and then reformats it to the desired format. So just make sure there isn't anything pertinent on the drive before you do that. If it's all good, you can proceed by hitting the Format button, and it's going to tell me, okay, I'm going to start this now. Don't remove it, and there we go. That quick. So it is. Oh, sorry, it's not done yet. There we go. Now it's done. USB drive successfully formatted. There you go. So I've formatted this particular drive, and now I am free to record. So we're going to do just that. The first thing that I would recommend doing, you absolutely can use the default session here to record into, but I do recommend creating new sessions. It can just help you to organize your recordings a little better. And so you can create a new session for every song that you're going to do, or maybe for an entire set or an entire evening or event. Or a particular rehearsal, however you want to organize your recordings, you can create new sessions as you wish. Just create a new session. We just hit New Session right here, up in that corner, and we get this window here where I'm going to give it a name. And I'll just clear this right here, and I'll just name this demo, and I'll hit the green enter button. Now I've given my session a name, and I simply hit this green create button, and then I confirm that I want to create that session. And you should see that pop up right there. So I've created myself a brand new recording session to record into, and that is also reflected up in here in the current session field. That's showing me that that is the current session that I'm going to be working within and recording into. All right, let's do it. I'm going to press record play one more time. That's going to take me back out to my recording screen where I have all my recording controls. Now to record any of the channels in the mixer, all you have to do is press the arm button, which is located at the bottom of the channel just above the transport controls. And so I can do this to any and every channel on the mixer that I want to record. It's that easy. For now, I'm just going to record a single channel, just like this. Okay. So I've got a microphone connected into channel 1 there. You can see the meter going. So I'm going to arm my channel 1 here. And to get this going, I'm simply going to press the record button with my channel armed. I hit record, and you're going to see the record play button light up like that. So now we know that we're recording, we're actively recording, and the timer here in this little timer window, that starts ticking along. So now we are recording onto the drive. It is actively recording my voice from this channel onto the hard drive, and I can keep recording for the duration of whatever I'm recording. And then when I want to stop it, I'm just going to press stop. That's it. So now I have recorded about 21 seconds of me talking into the mixer. If we want to play that back, it's just as easy. I can press arm here, and I can hit track there, and I should be able to hear this. If I reset my timeline, so this is our timeline control down here. You can see the green playhead right there indicates where you are in that timeline. I can either grab it with my finger and dial it back, or I can hit this arrow button right here, which is a return to 0, which will take that playhead all the way back to the 0 position. Now if with this set to track, I'm now telling the mixer that I no longer want to use the analog preamp as my source for this channel. I want to use the USB drive and whatever recording is now stored on there. I want that to be played back through this channel. So I'm going to give it a little volume here, and we'll see if we can hear this. I might need to reset my output. I did, spoiler alert, I'm using the monitor feature, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but let's see here. Nope. I've already failed. Let's see. There we go. There we are. Hard drive, and I can keep recording.
Yeah, I was going to say, all you have to do is turn it up.
Yep, turn it up. Yep. It's always something simple like that.
Yep.
All right, so there you go. Now you can hear my recording. I'll reset it now that I've embarrassed myself thoroughly. So now we know that we're recording. Okay. We're actively recording. There it is. So my voice was recorded. That's it. And that's it. That's how you record on a hard drive. It's that simple. And that's how you play tracks back. Now, I do want to explain within the same session. So if I were to continue recording, if I were to make a new recording now, so let's say I reset my timeline back to where it was, and I hit record again. So I'm going to untrack this, and then I'll reset this to ARM, and I'll begin my recording again. So now I'm actively recording into the same session. It is now writing a new file. So it is going to be writing a new recorded WAV file every time you stop the recording and then start a new recording, unless you change the session. And in a minute, we're actually going to jump over and take a look at what that actually looks like on your drive and how the tracks are recorded and arranged on the drive. So if I now stop this, now I've got a total of 46 seconds on my timeline. If I back this up to 21, which was the end of my original recording, unarm, track, play, volumize, whoops, play. Actively recording into the same session. It is now writing a new file. So in the timeline here, as I keep recording, it's just going to keep adding time onto the timeline. So I can go all the way back to the beginning, which was my first recording. The record play button light up. I don't need my microphone anymore. So now, I can scrub all the way through to any point in this, and in the timeline on the mixer here, it is just going to kind of appear as one continuous recording. But it is important to know that every time you push stop and then re-record, there is a new file being created. It is not continuing on with the same file. So when you open up your drive later, you're going to have any number of files in there, or the number of files that you recorded into this session. Let's look at that now. So we've recorded onto our drive. It's easy. It's fun. We've had a good time. I'm going to go ahead and transition over and show you a part of my desktop now. And I'm going to open up a Finder window, and I have a drive connected to my computer. So this is a USB hard drive that I've been using to record into. You can see I've got a number of sessions in here. So the first thing you're going to see are folders like this, a folder and a header file here that is associated with each folder. So every time you create a session, it is creating this master session folder with the name of the session that you created. And at the same time, it creates this header file, which the mixer actually needs to be able to access the information in the file and play that stuff back when we set the mixer to track and then play those tracks. If I punch into these, I can now see within my session file, I have individual track folders for all of my available tracks on the mixer. So this was a TouchMix 16 session, so this was recorded on the 16. So I have 22 track folders. So that's the first 16 channels, the 16 inputs, and then my stereo inputs here are all on various channels. And then the last two channels are always going to be the stereo record channel. So you end up with it's two files, writes a left and a right file for your stereo mix, and it saves those in the last two folders in your session. I'm going to go out here. This is a TouchMix 8 recording session, so I have a total of 12 tracks in here. And then this is a TouchMix 30 session, so I have a total of 32 tracks here, 31 and 32 being my stereo 2-track record. Okay, you'll also notice I did want to show you, I've actually already been working with a lot of these tracks. So in these folders, these are named. So if you go into your individual track folders here, now we actually have the recorded files. This is a WAV file, so TouchMix records 32-bit float point, full uncompressed broadcast quality WAV files. They're very high quality WAV files, and it just saves each track that is armed, saves a file into that associated track folder. This is what it's actually going to look like after being directly recorded. This file here is a direct recording from the mixer. If I just go into my track 1 there you go, I get a file called region 1. If I go out and I go into my track 2, this is also called region 1. So the mixer inherently is just going to write a WAV file into each folder, pertaining to the track that is armed, and it's just going to name the file very generically region 1, and then if you were to stop and start again, it would be region 2, region 3, so on and so forth. And so you could end up with just any number of tracks in here that are just named region 1 through whatever, and they're all going to be the same for every folder. Okay. Now, to get this out of this drive, let's say you wanted to take these files out of here and use them in a DAW session maybe, or just take them and do whatever you need to do with them outside of this folder, you can very simply go in here and I can copy them out like such. Very easy to do that. But now if I just do this one at a time as they are, with them all being named the same for every channel, you're going to end up with a problem on your file system. Your computer system doesn't like that. So it's a good idea to actively rename them either before you pull them out of the file directly in their folder here, or once you do get it out here, I can rename this to whatever channel this might have been. Maybe that was the kick channel. So you're going to want to make sure you do that as you pull these out. Or you can use this really handy tool that we've provided for you, this free utility called the TouchMix DAW utility. You can download this for free again on QSC.com. And I have some links that I can provide for you. I think I'll put them in the chat at the end of this.
So Jason, really quick, we have a question.
Great.
And this is John, and he's asking, he says, I notice I get a pop noise when I press stop between songs or sets.
Yes, you do. That is a good question, and I am definitely going to talk about why that happens, and I'm going to lay out very clearly what is actually happening in the mixer when you do overdubs and re-recordings and things like that. It is essentially, to loosely answer the question now, I'm going to get into it in a minute. What's happening is when you, as I said, every time you hit start and stop on the mixer, right, it's writing a new file. So when you're overdubbing, when you're doing an overdub, it's writing a brand new file, in the timeline of the spot where you want to be re-recorded over. It's not re-recording the original file. It's adding a new file on top of it in the same spot on the timeline within the mixer. So when you scrub backwards in time, when the playhead hits that point in its timeline, it's actually changing over to that new file, and that's why you get that pop sound. And I've got, we're going to get into that a little deeper, and I'll lay that out a little more clearly in a second. That is a fantastic question. Thank you for that. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at our DAW utility. I'm going to minimize this for a second I'm going to pull up the DAW utility. So this is it. This is our TouchMix DAW utility. And it's a free download, as I mentioned. I'm going to go ahead and choose the TouchMix to DAW session. There are two modes here, so I can use this to either export recorded files from a hard drive that I've recorded on TouchMix and save them onto my computer system somewhere locally. So then I can take them and import them into a DAW session or whatever you might be doing. You can also go the other way. There's this option, DAW to TouchMix, which will allow you to take tracks from your computer and load them up onto a drive into a proper TouchMix recording session. Then you can then play those files on the mixer. And these can be any WAV files. They don't have to be files that have already been recorded on the mixer. So that's a really handy feature of this tool as well. But let's go ahead and just export some files here. So I've already kind of done this, but just to step through it, in my upper fields here, this is where I'm going to choose what drive I'm going to be pulling these tracks from. So I know that I have my drive in the E. This is drive E. And then it will show you, it'll automatically find all available sessions. I'm just going to change this for a second so you can see this populate. I'll change this to X. See, nothing on X. It is all blank. It doesn't know what it's looking at. It can't find any TouchMix sessions in that drive. So I'm going to select my actual external drive here that I know I have recordings on. And then in the session field right below it, I get all of the available TouchMix recording sessions that are on that drive. I'm going to pick the appropriate one. In this case, I'm going to pick the 2EO session because that is a brand new session that I have not imported yet. And I'm going to name this, let's say, I'll just rename what I've done there, 2EO export. So we're going to name the session, and what that name is, that's the name of the folder. So what it's going to do is it's going to create a brand new folder on your computer system somewhere where we're going to designate right now. And so we need to give that folder a name. The utility is going to create a folder with whatever name you type in the name field there, and then it's going to save all of your tracks from your session on the hard drive into that folder that it is going to create. It's really handy, and it does this as a batch. So instead of you having to go into and individually pick out each of your recorded files from all of their track files, it's going to do it for you. It's also going to apply the name that they might have been given on the mixer itself. And we can see that already happening. So when I selected this session here, 2EO, all of my channels populated with files that it found that session, and it says, okay, these are all of the recording files that I found in this session, and these are all the tracks that they were recorded on. So I have them all here. I can see them by name, which is very handy, and I can either check these boxes to select which tracks I want to import, or if I want to grab the whole thing, I can just click this all button, and everything that has a recorded file in it gets checked automatically. You do also have these handy features here for your stereo channels. You do have your 3 stereo inputs plus your stereo dedicated record bus. Those will default to stereo, which means that when it imports them, it's going to import them as a stereo file. You can change this to dual mono if you want to, which will, instead of pulling in a single file that is a stereo file, it'll take that information and it'll save them as 2 individual mono files. So it will split the left and the right out of that stereo file and save it individually as a left mono file and a right mono file. So you have that option. That's pretty handy. Okay, we've got this all checked. We've got this all set up. We've got, I'll specify my destination here. If I click on that, I'm just going to save this to my desktop. That's very simple. I know exactly where that is. Once it's saved, if I want to move it somewhere else, I can do that. But for me, I always save these to my desktop because that's just a really easy location to get them to initially. So I'll select that. So I know that's going to my desktop. I know it's going to be called 2EO export. And I'm just going to hit, kind of getting out of the window there a little bit, hit this export button right there. And it's going to ask you to confirm yes. It's going to think about it. And it's going to crash. So good. This is going well. Let me re-pull this up. I had this open for the duration of the night, so it might have been freaked out. I'm going to redo all this. My apologies. We'll grab 2EO, and we'll say 2EO export, explorer. That works for me. I'll say desktop, select, and I want to keep it. Oh, well, that gives me a chance to talk about this. Export format. It defaults to its native 32-bit file integer. But you can change this if you want to. If you want to export these as either 32-bit, or sorry, 24-bit, or what's called float, you have that option here. And the reason you might want to do that is if you're intending to eventually pull these tracks into a DAW session or a digital audio workstation software session, some DAW software does not accept 32-bit WAV files. One of them that I know in particular that does not is Logic Pro. It's very, very popular DAW, and for some reason it doesn't accept 32-bit files. So in that instance, at some point before you get those files into that DAW, you would need to convert them to 24-bit. You can do that right here, right on your export, directly from this utility. So I can select 32-bit right here, and then they will be exported as, or sorry, 24-bit files. For this, I'm going to leave it at 32-bit, and then I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to export. I'm going to say yes, and there we go. Now we get the export, and we can see them. They're off and running. So now we would, just wait for this to complete itself. I do have a lot of files on here, so it's going to take it a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this to save us some time, because I actually already have exported this. I lied earlier, but I wanted to show you the process here. So I'm going to cancel that right there, but normally we'd want to let that finish. I'm going to minimize this, and I have my folder right here that I have already previously exported. It was the same exact session on the same drive, and so everything is the same. Now when I open this folder, this is what it looks like. I have them all. I have all my recorded files all in one location, in one folder, and it has applied all of the names that were given to each of those tracks in the mixer. So this is the, when I recorded this session, I had all of my channels named according to what the channel was. That information that metadata is actually stored in the files themselves, and the DAW utility finds that data and applies it to the track, and so it names all your channels for you. It's a very useful tool, and from here, all I would do is, if I wanted to just import these, I could select them all and then drag them into whatever DAW software I have. It's that easy. So the inverse of this, we're going to take a look at real quick here. I'm going to minimize that window there. Go back to my utility, and let's say I have files on my computer that I want to put on the drive. For an instance, I know I have this folder here. I've got a bunch of WAV files in here. Now these are tracks that I was working on in a DAW session called Reaper. Reaper gives each of the tracks that it works with these interesting little peak files that it uses. So I've got a bunch of WAV files in here. I've got a bunch of other files in here as well. I'm going to close that, and so I'm going to take all of the files that are in that folder on my desktop, and I'm going to now save them onto a drive so that I can use them in my mixer here. So with the utility, I'm going to switch this tab up here from TouchMix to DAW to TouchMix. So we're going the other way. Now I'm going to select the source. This is going to be the folder on my computer where those files are located, and so I know that that folder is on my desktop, and it was called Brown Bottle Tracks. So there it is. I'm going to select folder, and there you go. It automatically finds any and all WAV files that are in that folder, and it sort of applies them. It's a semi-smart application. Well, it will try to apply them to various tracks. If it recognizes that they have been at some point previously recorded on the mixer. If they haven't, that's okay, because every single track window field now is a drop-down window, and so you can select any of the available WAV files in this folder to be imported into any of the channels. So if I wanted every single channel to have the same kick drum recording, I can do that, or I can have it be the intended normal layout there. However, I want to import these. So you can arrange these. You can import all of your files onto the drive, and you can assign the specific channel on the mixer that you want each of those files to be played back on. So that's a really useful feature. Now in my destination field right here, this is simply where I'm going to pick the external drive that I'm going to be now exporting and saving these files onto. It's going to create a new TouchMix recording session with these files on my hard drive. So I'm going to select that. Now I'm going to give it a name, because again, it's going to be writing a session folder on the drive, and so it needs a name to be applied to it. I'll name this Brown Bottle Import and Import. I'm good at typing. And now I can either individually select what channels I want to import, or if I want to get everything, again, I have that all button, and now it gives me on my export button. I hit export. I say, yes, I'm okay with this, and we're off to the races. Now it is taking all of those files and saving them directly onto my drive. The hard drive I have in here is a little slow. I'm going to cancel this. I just wanted to, again, show you the process. I have already done this, so I can actually now take a different drive and connect it into my board here, and we will quickly take a look at what I've done. So I'm going to pop back over to my mixer. I'm going to switch out my USB drive in the back. Got a little there. Okay. Brand new USB imported into the back of the mixer. Now I go to my record setup, and I have my brown bottle session right there. If I select it and hit the recall button, I confirm that I want to recall that session. In the current session field, it shows me that I have recalled my new session. I hit record play to get back to my transport. There we are. Again, in the USB session field, it's showing me my current session, the new session that I've recalled. I can reset my playhead, and I can set all of these to track, because this is a full 24 track session. I go back to the beginning. Now if I hit play, I'll immediately see there's audio now playing on these channels, and then if I start to bring up my sliders a little bit, we'll hear my awesome recording session. So I've taken tracks from my computer, loaded them on a drive, and I'm now able to play them back on my mixer. That easy, guys. Okay. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the stereo recording feature. And just get a little bit of a mix happen here. Select my channel. Okay. Got all my channels at a relative level, and stop that. If I go into my next bank here, you notice I was shuffling through my different banks with my navigation strip at the top. We have 8 input faders displayed on the screen at any time, and we can navigate between our different banks with our navigation buttons at the top. I'm going to select the stereo input / 2-track bank right here, and that gets me to this screen where I now have my 2-track recording channel and the 2-track playback channel. So my 2-track recording channel here is essentially taking, by default, it is taking the main channel and record and can record whatever is happening on your main output channel. And all you have to do is arm that and hit record. Now anything that is happening in your mix that is going to your main channel is now recorded right there on that stereo channel. I'm going to back up briefly here. I realize I forgot to illustrate one thing. In my recording setup screen here, you have a recording pickoff option. The recordings are going to be taken directly from the preamps of the mixer. So your channel fader level does not dictate the level that you're going to be recording those tracks at. It is your preamp that's coming, the information is coming directly from the preamp and being saved onto the drive from there. So it is dry. It's going to be recording those inputs dry, and if you were in the webinar last week where we talked about gain structure, that is going to be very important into making sure that your recordings are healthy. If you're recording, you want to have your preamp set to the appropriate, the nominal operating level to get a nice level for your recordings. But other than that, that's all it's doing. So by default, it is going to be set to pre here, so it's coming directly dry from your preamp directly to your hard drive. You do have the option to set this to post here, and what post does is it will now include your EQ processing and your dynamics processing. So that's your dynamic, or your compressor and your gate. So your EQ, compression, and gate can be recorded into the files if you want that. But again, it won't record your actual fader level, and it won't ever record effects in the multi-track mode. So it's just, if you want the channel strip processing, you can get that, but not effects. Now in the stereo record channel, like I said, it's recording the main channel directly. So anything that's happening in the main mix is recorded exactly as you would hear it in the main mix, including effects and channel levels and everything. You're recording your actual mix down on the mixer into a stereo recording. And then the playback channel right next to it is how you can listen to that back. This is going to be important in a minute. So you can arm this, and you can record your main mix onto its own recorded left and right files. And then if you wanted to listen to that, you can unarm this and scrub your timeline back to any point, and then just by pulling this fader up here, this is sort of an output for your stereo recording there. So that is going to allow you to listen back to anything that you have recorded on this channel there. Again, this routing will be important in a little bit. But just so long as we understand that for now, if I want to play back and listen to anything on my stereo recording, I do that through this channel, and I simply raise the fader, and now that puts that into my main mix, and I can listen to that. Okay, so you can do a number of things with this. For starters, you can simply just use this as a tool to just record your main mix. Or you can have all of your individual channels armed plus the stereo and get a dry multi-track recording of everything individually plus your actual stereo mixdown of what your mix actually sounded like. You can use them simultaneously. Or you can use the stereo recorder to mix down a multi-track recording. So if I have a multi-track recording recalled like I do here, and I want to mix it on the mixer and re-record it and bounce it into a stereo recording, I can use this channel to do that simply by arming that. Now I already have all my other channels set to track, right? So it's going to already be playing that information back through the mixer. I can mix it down on the mixer and apply whatever processing I want to it and get a nice mix and have that be recording at the same time to this channel. And it's simply making sure that's armed, making sure my channels are set to track, and then I can hit record and play.
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
We have a question or a comment.
Okay.
One of our attendees is asking, can you talk about the importance of pressing stop when you're done recording a session before removing your drive?
Absolutely. Yeah, you have to tell the mixer that you're done recording, either before you turn the mixer off or pulling the drive. If you remove or disconnect the hard drive while it is still actively recording, it's going to corrupt your recordings. Essentially, it's going to break those recordings, and there's a very high chance that you won't be able to recover them. There is some software that you might be able to recover them with. I know some people have had success doing this with Audacity, but a lot of times, if your hard drive is pulled while it is actively recording, you're not giving it the ability to finalize its recording process and cap off the recording and stamp it with a header file and give it its kind of closing metadata information that it needs to create a complete encapsulated file. So you're just leaving it open-ended and it doesn't have a chance to complete that file, and it just becomes garbled information. It's no longer, for the most part, it's corrupt and you've lost it. So that was a good question. That was a great comment. Do always make sure to press stop when you're done recording. When you know you're done recording, hit stop, and then you're free to remove your drive. Thank you for that. I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so what I just did just to close this section out, I've very simply recorded 4 seconds of my full mix of my pre-recorded tracks into my stereo bus, and to listen to those, I can unarm that. And I'm going to pull these off of track for a little bit to illustrate this, because I don't want to be hearing these now. I just want to hear what's on my recorded bus. I'm going to reset this back, and actually, not sure where that went. I'm not sure where I had my timeline to start with, but we can see I've got a little bit of audio through there. Not much. That was a real quick recording. There you go. So fun. But that is the process. If you want to re-record, you want to mix down and create a stereo mix of a session that is a multi-track session, you can absolutely do that with the stereo track there. Okay, last thing I want to talk about pertaining to recording to hard drives is the question that was asked a little while ago. What if you overdub? So you can overdub with the mixer, and to overdub, all you would do is make sure you've got all of your channels that you want to hear, you want the performer to listen to play along to, set to track, and you want to arm the particular channel that you want to re-record. You're going to find the section of the song, in your timeline that you want to overdo or redo, and then you want to kind of back it up so it's just a few seconds before that, so that the performer has a little bit of time to get into the part, right? And then So I'd go, I have a microphone in here, so I can use this as my example. So I've set my channel that I'm going to overdub with, so my performer who is redoing the section of the song, we're going to arm that channel. Everything else that the performer wants to listen to play along to is set to track. We've got our timeline set to the specific location, just before the location that we want to punch them in, and then all we're going to do is hit play and record. And now my tracks, oh, my drive is full. I'm using a full hard drive. Make sure that you have enough space on your hard drive before you start this experiment. That is what happens. But to continue just explaining the process, you would hit play and hit record. The tracks that are set to track will now play back, and the channel or channels that are set to arm will now be recording, and they will start recording in the TouchMix timeline, from that point. And so they can ease into their part, they can redo the guitar solo, they can redo the part that they're overdubbing, and then once they're done, you hit stop, and then that is a brand new section of that song. As I explained though, it is a new file, and I'm gonna jump back over here for a second and show you this. So this is just a little diagram that I created that can kind of help show you what's happening on the mixer. So this is a single channel. So this is your original recording, is this guy right here. So I have my original track file. Now this section right here I didn't like. I want to redo it, okay? So I'm going to reset my playhead to somewhere over here, and I hit play, and then I hit record, and with this channel armed. And I hit my spot, and I play over the original recording, and I do my overdub. But it's a second file. So what you end up with is a whole nother file that is condensed. It's a shorter file because you started it here and you ended it here, whereas the original recording was much longer and was the full take or whatever it might have been. And the mixer remembers this in its own timeline. So if you were to set the playhead back over here, play this channel back, the mixer would be playing this audio up until this point, and then it would switch over and start playing this file. That is why you get that pop when you listen back on the mixer. It is changing the channel, changing the file that it is playing back in real time. So you do get a little kind of a pop when it crosses over into that new file. And that's it. So that's something that you want to be aware of. The other thing you want to be aware of when you're doing this is because this file is much smaller, it obviously doesn't fit. It doesn't line up properly. So if your plan was to take these files and then load them up into a DAW session and then mix them down that way, you would have to, within the timeline of your DAW, take that overdubbed track file and line it up and get it aligned within the timeline so it fits in properly with the rest of your channels and the rest of your audio. Okay, so I hope that made sense. I hope that was pretty clear. So hard drive recording is very powerful, very simple to do, and can be very advantageous for a number of reasons, a number of applications: recording shows, recording rehearsals, recording events, speeches, whatever it is you're out there mixing. You can record all of it as well, and then have the ability to export those files, mix them later, mix them down with the mixer. So it's a pretty powerful recording tool in and of itself. And all three models have the ability to do all of the things that I've shown you today. Now what I want to do is jump into using the TouchMix 30 specifically as a DAW interface. So this mixer does have the ability to interface directly. You can connect it with your computer or your laptop with a USB A to B cable. That is a USB cable that has the A, kind of the flatter rectangle end on one, and then the more square end on the other end. And you'll connect the B end into the mixer. It'll only fit into one spot on that mixer. Should be very easy to figure out which connection that is, and then the other end goes to your computer. And then you can use this as a 32 channel interface directly to your DAW software. And so all we have to do on our mixer to configure that is change our record mode. So on a TouchMix 30, we go to record mode and we go to multitrack DAW, and that's it. So we're in our DAW mode, our transport controls go away, our ARM channel buttons go away. We still have our track buttons, and we'll get to that in a minute, but all we really have is our kind of signal indicators. These are gonna illuminate, light up whenever signal is passing either away or from the USB connection there. So that's all we have here. Now, the rest of this lies within your specific DAW application. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull up my DAW here. I'm using Reaper. There are many DAW softwares out there. We have Pro Tools is sort of the industry standard. I know. See that? It gave me a little buffer there. It's pretty mad. We'll configure that in a second. Pro Tools is sort of an industry standard. I mentioned Logic Pro if you're using an Apple. There is Cubase. There is Studio One. There's Nuendo, Reaper here. So there's a whole bunch of them. Some of them are free. Some of them cost a whole bunch of money. They all do relatively the same thing. Sometimes some of the features are done slightly differently. Sometimes some things are more complex than others within the specific software. So whatever you're comfortable with, whatever your particular DAW of choice is, you can use it with a TouchMix 30. In this case, I'm going to be doing this demo using Reaper here. It's a pretty nice, pretty intuitive DAW. So the first thing I want to do is get this set up. See, it keeps yelling at me. It doesn't like my current configurations here. So we're going to go ahead and make it happy. We're going to do two things. We're going to, I know there was an error. We're going to use this guy. This is what it's mad about. So I'll go ahead and talk about this now. I'm using a PC. If you're using a Mac, the mixer is going to automatically just connect with your native software and your local DAW. It does this using core audio. That is how Apple computers communicate with external audio devices. It's core audio. The TouchMix has core audio built into it. If you're using a PC, you'll need to download our ASIO driver, our TouchMix ASIO driver, which is called the QSC TouchMix-30 Pro Audio Control Panel. This is a free download, another free download that you can access on QSC.com. And this allows serves as a checkpoint to get your audio or get your mixer connected to your local software here. So it's not liking this right now because I've had it running overnight. So I'm just going to close it out, reopen it, and then I'm going to set up a few configurations here. So that's my control panel. I've got that open, and you can see it is already recognizing the mixer. So it knows that I have my TouchMix 30 Pro connected to my computer. It sees it, and this is happy. For now, I'm going to scoot that out of the way, and I'm going to go into File. And the first thing I want to do is go to my settings. Now, this might be different depending on your particular DAW. Okay, we're going to start over. You might need to research where these particular settings are located in your specific DAW, but the first thing we want to do is set our sample rate so that it matches the DAW. And actually on my mixer here, I'm going to change this. I'm going to change this to 48. So we can change the sample rate here from 41 to 48K. I'm going to go with 48K. And I like working with 48. But you do have the option to use either or. Now, I'm going to go back to my DAW, and we're going to set this up. So I'm going to go into my project settings in Reaper. Again, this might be somewhere different within your DAW. What we're going to want to look for is the native sample rate of your DAW. And so for me, that's located right here. It says project sample rate. It is set to 4100, and I have changed my mixer to 48, so I want to change this to match. So that should be 48 as well, and I can hit OK. So I got my sample rate configured. Now I want to tell the software that I want to be using my TouchMix as the input source. So I'm going to go into my Preferences, which is located in Reaper. It's in Options. I'm going to go to Preferences, and I'm going to go to Devices. And I'm going to want to make sure that it is set to ASIO, because we're using our ASIO driver. And as soon as I select that, you see, I'll change this just to show you what happens. You know, if I want to use my native speakers and microphone, I can do that. And then I change it to ASIO, and there we go. It finds my ASIO driver, TouchMix 30 Pro, and I can designate my first and last input and output channels on the board. And typically I want that to be input 1, input 32, first and last, and then the output's the same thing, 1 and 32, first and last. So now my DAW knows, okay, I'm using the mixer as my in and out source. So I'm pulling my audio in from this mixer through designated channels, and I'm going to be returning audio back out to this. So we hit OK, we're all set. Now we need to create some tracks to record into. So I'm just going to click over here, and I'm going to select New Track. Now I have a track to record into. If I arm this, every DAW has the same set of buttons. You're going to have arm buttons similar to what we saw on the mixer, where we can arm the channel to record onto a hard drive. in our DAW, we have channels. When we want to record into those channels, we're going to need to arm them. And you can see as soon as I armed my channel, I have audio popping up here from this microphone that I have connected into channel 1. It found input 1. It associated my first track here, which is track 1. It associated that with input 1 on my mixer, which it knows is I'm using as my input source. So that worked out fine. That was easy. Now, if I get a couple more tracks happening just by creating a few more, I'm going to need to do the same thing. I'm actually going to need to set these up though, because by default, every time you create a new track, it is going to want to just be pulling its source from input 1 still. As you can see, if I arm that, there you go. It says input 1 there, and all the way down, these are all set to input 1. I can do this a couple ways, in Reaper anyway. Again, based on the specific DAW you're using, the way it deals with its internal audio routing may differ from what I'm showing you, so it is something that you'll need to look into kind of on your end for your specific software. But for me, what I'm going to do is where it says input 1 here, I'm going to click this, and I'm going to say yes, I do want a mono input, but I want this one to be input 2. And this one can be input, mono input 3, and so on. I can do that like this. And if I have a handful of channels like that, that is easy enough to do. I can just continue down and configure all of these. Actually, I'll just go ahead and do that. I've got 5 channels. It's not a big deal. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now they're all set to inputs 1 through 5 on my mixer. So if I have whatever I have connected on my mixer from 1 through 5, they're all going to be directed into these specific channels in my DAW. Now, if I want to record, you can see I do have a mic here, so I have the ability to record this. And I'm going to press the record button right here in my DAW, the master record, which is going to start my recording. And we are going, we're off to the races. We're recording. You can see my audio being recorded. Hey, this is fun. I am recording. Now I'm going to stop that, and I have a recording. Now these obviously are blank. I don't need to keep those. But the audio I recorded on my microphone on channel 1 shows up right there. There you go. It's that easy. I have recorded into my DAW. Now what happens if I play this back? If I reset the timeline, I hit my play, it is playing. Even if I unarm the track, I can see now we're playing this audio back, but we can't hear it yet, right? And that is because we haven't told it where we want to hear it from. That's important. We have to set up our outputs in the DAW as well. We're going to route them back to the mixer on specific channels. And if we look down here, this is our master output. I'll make this a little bigger. This right here is our master, showing us our master output. Now I have all of this is my mix window for my 5 channels that I've created. Here's my master output. There is a route button here. Again, might be different in your specific DAW, but either way, however you need to do this in your DAW, what you're going to want to do is direct this output to specific channels on the mixer. By default, this particular software is trying to send the master output here back to channels 1 and 2 on the mixer. It says out 1 and 2, so it is directing this audio back out to the mixer, and it's going to show up on the mixer on channels 1 and 2. We don't want that because we want to be recording into those channels, right? We don't want to record and then hear everything back through those channels. We want to have a designated kind of output on the mixer, and what we're going to do is we're going to use, I'm going to bounce over again, we're going to use this. We're going to use our 2-track playback channel as our DAW output. So this is going to act kind of as our DAW channel. This is where we're going to listen to our DAW back through the mixer. So we're going to route the output here, the master out from our DAW, to 31 and 32 on my mixer, because I know those channels are the 2-track record playback channel. So it's going to be output 31 and 32. That is the 2-track channel. That's how you get there. So if I click my route button, I don't want it to go to out 1 and 2, so I'm going to delete that, and I'm just going to say build a new one, and instead I'm going to use 31 and 32. So now that is directing my main output to 31 and 32, and on my mixer I should now be able to see that. I'm going to, if I play this back, there we go. We're going, we're off to the races. We're recording. You can see my audio being recorded. Hey, this is fun. I am recording. Now I'm gonna, there's my dumb voice recording played back through the 2-track channel. So that is coming through the master output of the mixer. So as you build your mix, as you build your recording, you know, everything that is going to your master output from your DAW session is now going to be directed through here. So that is listening to the master output on the TouchMix. We also have the ability to route every individual channel back to itself in the mixer. To do that, we can access the routing options for each individual channel. However, you can do that in your DAW. And this is going to be advantageous for a number of reasons. So we're actually going to, what we're going to do now is we're going to direct each channel in our DAW session to go to the master output of the DAW session, which it already is doing by default. We're also going to send it directly back to the same input that it is coming in from on the mixer. Okay, it's going to start to get a little complex at this point. So if I open my routing options for input 1, I can see the options here to add a new hardware output. You can't say this enough. This will be different depending on the specific DAW you're using. So it just depends on how you're going to route your audio in your DAW. But what we're going to want to do is send this channel back to itself. So however you need to do that in your DAW. And for me, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down my different options here on where I can send this channel. And I'm going to send it to out 1. Boom, now I have this going to out 1, and it is still, see this checkbox here, still going to my master send in the DAW, and it's also going back out to output 1, which will direct it directly back to itself in the mixer. Okay, I can close that. I can continue to do that with my other tracks. Another way to do this, many DAWs have an option, an overall routing matrix option. Some of them don't, but a lot of them will do, and it'll look something like this. I can access my routing matrix. I had that in a tab down here. If I wanted to access it another way, that would have been View and Routing Matrix. I would have selected that there. But that brings me here. So this is showing me my 5 tracks in my DAW, and then all of my inputs from my mixer, all of my channels, again, on the output end of it on my DAW session, and then all of the available outputs on the mixer, okay? So right now you can see I've directed all of my tracks in my DAW to my master output, and then it knows here the different inputs from the mixer that it is going to be pulling audio from. So that's all set. Additionally, I've already done this with my master. I've routed my master output here to stereo 31 and 32, and I've directed input 1 back to output 1 there. And if I wanted to use this page just to set up the rest of my channels, all you do is kind of just continue down that matrix like that. So now all 5 of my inputs are going back to themselves like that. All right, now I'm going to go back to my mixer view. So I've configured all my channels to go back to my mixer. And on the mixer, now all I would do to pull those channels back into the mixer would be to set these individual channels to track. So now my 5 channels on my DAW are being returned to the mixer. So I can do a couple of interesting things with this. The first of which I'm going to talk about right now. I'm going to take a slight detour because I've shown you how to do this. Since now what we're actually doing is sending audio over the USB to our DAW session and then returning it back to the same channel in real time, I can do some interesting things like apply processing to that channel in the DAW session and then hear that processing in real time here. Real quickly, just to demonstrate that, on my channel 1 where I have my microphone placed, if I arm that, I can see my microphone. I'm getting a little double of myself. I'm going to pull my 2-track back there. So now we're only listening to this microphone through its own channel on the mixer. Select that, turn that up a little bit, and I'm going to mute my presentation microphone briefly. There we go. So now you're listening to me through the mixer. If I grab an effect, I can, let's see, yeah, that works. Just a simple 1 knob. Now I can add some reverb to my voice. There it is, just like that. Now you do hear that there's a slight echo. You might hear a slight echo if I punch my presentation microphone back on. Okay, that is because there is a high I/O buffer happening right now. So if you're going to use this, I'm going to turn this off. If you're going to use this function or this application, you do need to access your software and if you're using a PC, your ASIO driver here, and adjust the sample size, the I/O buffer size. It'll default to something enormous, like 1024. Sometimes it'll be 512. But if you reset this down to something like 64, hey, there we go. Now you're getting that in absolute real time. There's no latency. So what we want to overcome is the latency there. Super fun. Okay, so that can be that can be a whole lot of fun, a whole other can of worms that you can dive down, applying processing from a DAW to your mixer in real time. So that kind of just can open up the processing capabilities for you there, and you can have a lot of fun with that. At this point, I'm going to I'm going to open up a session that I have previously created for myself. Nope, we don't need to save that. Okay, so here is a big old fat recording session, full 24 channel session that I've been working with. And I'm gonna sort of simulate an actual kind of recording situation now. So when we are recording, if we were going to use this console as a studio console in a recording environment, there's a couple of things that we would want to be able, as the engineer, we would want to be able to listen to and be able to have control of. And as the performer, there's a couple of things that you want to be able to listen to as well. And we have a lot of control over the things that we can allow ourselves and our performers to hear. And we can create custom mixes for everybody. And this is where it gets really, really, really fun and exciting. So we're going to pretend, that we're in a really cool recording situation, and we've tracked, all of these tracks, and we're just kind of putting the final touches on here. We're going to track a couple more musicians, and to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that I've got all my routing done. I've already created this session, so I've already routed this exactly as I just showed you previously. If you take a look at my matrix here, I've got everything set up. So it's going to the master and then back out to itself. So we're good there. Now, there's a neat feature on the TouchMix called Monitor. And you can't see the button on my view here, but if you have a mixer in front of you, if you have a TouchMix-30 in front of you, you should see the button called Monitor. It's right above the wheel, the master encoder wheel. If you press Monitor, that gives us this field. Now, there are dedicated monitor outputs on the back of the mixer as well. And so you can connect those outputs directly to some studio monitors that you have, or to a headphone system, or whatever you want to listen to it in your control room. And you have the ability to switch what you're listening to on those speakers. So I've actually already done this. I've connected mine to my broadcast mixer, which is going out to you guys. And so far, I've just had it set to my main output channel. But we can actually set it to Q. And for now, I'm going to do that. And we're going to be looking at various elements of this as we go along the rest of the training here. But for now, I'm going to set this to Q. And so what this does is that allows me to Q, with the Q feature, anything that I now want to hear on my studio monitors. So I've got that set. Now on my individual channels, I have Q buttons. So if I want to listen to an individual input on the mixer, I can cue it. If I want to listen to the main master out from my DAW, I can cue that now, since I'm no longer listening to my main. So now I'm cueing whatever I want to listen to, and that allows me a little bit more control, a little more granular control about kind of what I can listen to at any given time. So I can listen to the channel directly, so I can hear what's happening on the channel in the mixer directly, and then I can cue the 2-track here, and because I've routed my outputs in my DAW to go here, now I'm listening to my master output from my DAW session, and then in my DAW, if I want to be able to listen to an individual channel or a track in here, within the DAW you have the same controls. So I have a solo channel and a mute channel control on every track in my DAW, and every DAW has these controls. So if I just want to listen to an individual channel in my session, I can solo it out, and then with my 2-track playback cued here, I know I'm only listening to that one channel in my DAW session, but it gets better. Okay, so now let's say we need to set up a headphone mix for our performers. This could be a single performer, or maybe you have an ensemble all together in a tracking room. With the TouchMix-30 Pro, we have 14 mono auxes. These can all be linked together to create a total of 7 stereo mixes. So you can have up to 7 different mixes, stereo mixes, that you can then run to performers' headphones. You can connect headphone amps to the back of the connections in the back, and you can create up to 7 different mixes for your performers to listen to. And because you're doing it with the mixer, you can set it up however they want to hear it. And this is because we have set all of our channels to track. We have rerouted each of our individual tracks in the DAW to run back to themselves in the mixer, and then by setting each one to track, we're automatically pulling that audio back into the mixer. And so it's going both ways at the same time. So it can be recording, going to the DAW, and at the same time, any channel that is tracked, it's returning those tracks back from the DAW to the mixer. So this gives us the ability to use our auxes and build mixes to our performance taste. We can do anything we need to do. To give you an example, I'm going to go into 13 and 14, and I'm going to link these. And I do that by going, I'll show you, I'll undo that and redo that just so you can see. If I go into any of my aux mixes, 13 or 14, I access the master out for that aux, and I go link. So on the setup page, so within the master out, we're in the setup page, you have the name field here, and then you have this link button. I'm going to hit that, and I'm going to confirm the link, and that is going to link 13 and 14, and you can see now that became one big button. So now 13 and 14 are considered one mix. I'm creating one mix on my faders in the board here, and that is 13 and 14 are now a left and a right for that mix. So it's a stereo mix, and I can do that for any of them. They do link in what we call obvious pairs. So 1 and 2 link together, 3 and 4 link together, and so on and so on. You can't link 2 and 3, for example, so it is kind of just those obvious paired links, but you can absolutely do that and create 7 different links. I've chosen to do this on aux 13 and 14 actually because 11, 12, and 13 and 14 both have a dedicated 1/4 inch output that you can connect headphones directly to. So if I've just got like a single vocalist or something that I'm going to track, I can just plug that into there and then run headphones to them, and they can hear you. And then I can press home and then get into this mix, and then I can build them whatever they want to hear. I can give them a custom channel mix. I can even go in here now and I can apply processing. I can recall some presets on any of these channels and kind of dial in a mix to make them as comfortable as they can. I can even apply, the native effects on the TouchMix to any of the channels or to their own channel that they can hear themselves through, so they can perform well and deliver a good, clean performance and be comfortable. And again, I can do that ×7, which is a pretty powerful thing. Another great thing. Sorry, I keep itching my nose. Got a little nose thing today. On this note, we also have a dedicated talkback channel. So if I've got my console and my recording set up in my control room, and I have a tracking room where my performers are, and we have a soundproof barrier in between us, I can connect a microphone into my talkback channel on the mixer, and then I can come into my menu, my main menu of the mixer, access the talkback there. Now I can direct this mic to any of the outputs on the mixer. And if I'm using the mixer's outputs to build their headphone mixes, I can go ahead and put my mic right into their ears and talk to them, and then I can clearly hear them through my mixer as well. So it's a great way to really set up a really convenient workflow in a studio and be able to talk to your performers, make them comfortable, and at the same time, so we can talk to them. Now going back to our monitor control for a second, I'm going to exit out to my main recording screen here. If I access my monitor again, now we can see we can also choose any of our monitor mixes as sources now. So if I need to at any point listen to a performer's headphone mix out of my own speakers or in my control room, I can select those and listen to them right here. So this gives you an enormous amount of control over what you can listen to at any given time, so you can really fine-tune and have fine control over your mixing process and your workflow. So it really does set up a pretty elegant workflow working within the studio. And from here I can be on my way. I can track them. If I wanted to switch that, if I pull that off of track now, just because this is where my microphone is, in my recording session, this is actually my kick channel. My channel 1 is a kick drum, but just for the sake of this experiment, I do have my microphone already connected into channel 1 there. So if I just go ahead and move my kick file out of the way for a little bit, I'm going to reset my playhead. And if I arm this channel, so I've got this armed, and I can send this back to my performer in their monitor mix, right? So I can send themselves back to them so they can hear a lot of their own mic. It should be, whoops, I do want to leave that on track. There we go. What did I do? I'm tripping up. I still have my session? Yeah. Oh, I did it again. I turned the channel down. Guys, make sure that your volume is up and your gain is up on your channels. Okay, so now I've got my performers microphone queued up. They can hear this in their mix, and the rest of the session is all queued up and set to track, so they can listen to the custom mix of the recorded session and sing along. And all I have to do in my DAW here is, with this armed, I hit the record button, and we're listening to that, and we're recording a brand new file over the sweet bluesy jam that we've got in our session. You can see it recording there. It's going. All right, that's good enough. And now I can pull that off, and I can, on my mixer, I know I'm going back and forth a lot here. I hope you guys aren't getting whiplash. I can reset that to track. Or what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make sure on my monitor I've just got that set to Q. Now I know I've got my 2-track queued, so I'm listening to my output from my DAW, and we can listen to what we did. Record button. Yeah, that's hot. So good. I'm clearly getting drowned out by the rad band there, which is okay, because nobody wants to hear me talk more than I have to. So there you go. So that's how you can track. And now you can track, an individual performer like I just did, or if you have an ensemble in a room tracking together, you just arm all of their channels in the DAW, have them play, and you're recording, you're on your way. And then you can even kind of feed some of the recordings back to them if they want to kind of check stuff as they're recording. So you can get an awesome workflow, an awesome tracking process happening here. Now to close us out, we're done tracking. Let's say we've got it all good. We've tracked everything. Everybody's happy with their performances. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to move my kick channel back so we can listen to this back. We've got that. Cool. Sounding good. So now we're going to mix everything down, right? After you track everything, you mix everything down to, in most cases, a stereo mix of all the tracks, kind of mixed down into one stereo track. I can use my DAW here to really easily do that. Obviously, using the processing and the power of the DAW itself is fantastic. Or if I want to, I can also use the mixer, or I can use kind of a combination of the two. And the way we do that gets a little complex, but I'm going to walk you through kind of how to route things and how to set this up so you can actually mix your DAW session down on the mixer back into the DAW. So that gives you the ability to use all of the tools on the mixer and the workflow of the mixer to mix your recorded session, and then have that go feed back into the DAW. The first thing we do to do this is build ourselves an entirely new track in our session here. And I realize we're already a bit over time. We're almost done. I really appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. Please feel free to jump in and ask me any questions at any point. If there are questions, this is a good time to pop in and ask them if anything's happening before I kind of get to the closing segment here. Silence. Awesome.
Yeah, no questions right now.
Talking into the void. All right, well, hopefully, everyone's good with it and following along and happy with what's happening here. So here is the finale. We're gonna set up a workflow to utilize the mixer and the DAW to do our mix down here. So I've got a brand new track here. I want to arm it, and I want to set this track as a stereo track. Okay, so this is going to act as our stereo mixed track in the end. So this is going to be a stereo track, and we're going to set this to inputs 31 and 32. That's very important. So inputs 31 and 32 are going to come from the 2-track record channel on the mixer. So this is inputs 31 and 32. So now, whatever's happening on, this channel is being directed to our new track in our DAW, okay? Which means we're essentially taking the main mix, because the main mix by default, feeds into the stereo record track here to be recorded, right? Now we're taking that, we're routing this channel into our DAW, so we can get our main mix from our mixer into our DAW by utilizing this. Now, this does create we do have to set a couple of things up very carefully in order for this all to kind of work. The first of which is that we're not done with the DAW yet. So we're bringing this in from 31 and 32, and that's fine. Now what we're going to want to do is take its routing, and we're going to give it a new hardware output, and then we're going to return it to 31 and 32 also. An important thing here, and I'll explain why. So we're directing this out back to 31 and 32. So it's coming in from 31 and 32 and then out 31 and 32. And we want to remove this from the master send within the DAW session. So we don't want this channel to go to the master output of the session, because that's going to create sort of a feedback loop. Because the master output is also going to channels 31 and 32 in the mixer, right? Because that's how we've had that configured so far. So now we kind of are going to do like an either or. We're either going to choose the master output of the DAW to go to 31 and 32, or our brand new track to go there. And the first thing we do to be able to have that option is to unassign this channel from your master output. So now this channel is coming in 31 and 32 and going out 31 and 32. That's all it is doing. Now, what we do so we don't get that feedback loop is we mute our master output in the DAW. So now that is muted, so we won't hear that now in our 2-track playback channel. We're only going to hear this channel now. So now, if I go back to my mixer, and again, because I have everything set to track, and then so all of this stuff is coming from the DAW through the track mode and going to the main output, right? Because it's coming into the mixer now, and all of these channels are feeding the main output. The main output is feeding our 2-track record, which is going into the DAW and then coming back out of our 2-track playback channel. Okay, so we're just creating this big continuous signal path for our channels to get back to us through the DAW. And this is what that sounds like. If I now hit, so I've got this queued, so we're only going to be hearing this channel. I hit play in my DAW. I hit play in my DAW. What you doing, buddy? There we go. Yeah. Oh, I know what happened. I have to reset my, pardon me, TouchMix. When I showed you guys using the effects in real time, I reset the I/O buffer, and it's too low now. I don't want that. For recording purposes, you do want to leave this at something pretty high. There we go. Now it's happy. Okay. So we're getting a little bit of feedback loop still. Make sure I got all my routing done right. There we go. Okay. There we go. So I've got that. So now I can mix this stuff down. I'm listening to it, go into the DAW and come back out. But what I'm listening to, what's happening is on the mixer itself. So I'm listening to any changes I made here. I should be able to hear. I've done something wrong. My apologies. Let me take a look at my routing one more time. In 31 and 32. Stereo. Okay. Egg on my face. It should be okay. Don't have anything else queued. All set track, going to the main, going into here.
Jason, while you're figuring that out, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat for anybody who's interested in further training with the TouchMix. This is just a link to the training website's TouchMix course.
Absolutely.
So if anybody has any further interest, that's available there.
Perfect. What am I hearing that from? Let's see. I think I have. There we go. That's good. Let me do this. What I think I need to do, I was going to do this eventually. I didn't think I had to do it just yet. But what I'm going to try is I'm going to actually unassign my 2-track playback from my main output. Because what we get here is the 2-track playback is actually included in the mix, in the main mix. So by having this channel, this fader up, we are getting a feedback loop, and I actually think that was exactly my problem. So if I put that back in, and just verify this, and I bring this fader up, so I'm cueing that, but all of these channels are now going to my main output. So if I hit play, if I bring that up, there you go. So that's a second feedback loop. I am done. So if I remove that from going to my main output, that is almost the same thing that we did in the DAW by muting our master output and only routing our stereo channel back to itself, back to 31 and 32. Now we have to remove the playback channel from going to the main output because that's going to create a second feedback loop. Now we should be all good. Now if I listen to this, there we go. Now it doesn't matter what I do with that fader. I'm hearing everything and it's all good. Now, see? Now I'm listening to what's happening on the mixer in real time. So I can create my mix down this way. The other cool tool you have at your disposal when doing this is the solo in place feature. So if I actually now go ahead and change my cue mode by pressing menu, I'm going to go to mixer setup, and then I've got solo in place. So that has to do with the cue mode. Instead of using it as a cue, which is just directing that audio to your cue output or to the cue function of the monitor, now I'm using it as a solo in place button, which is the same thing as a solo button in your DAW. So it's actively going to solo that channel in the main mix. So now I've got that same functionality on the mixer as I'm mixing down on the mixer. So now if I go back here and I hit play on my DAW, and I'm going to turn my monitor up a little bit. Now if I solo out channels, there you go. There's my kick channel. Go over here. Here's my vocal channel. And now I can go and mix on the mixer. I can go into these inputs. I can start applying presets. Kick, no sub, rock gate. I can go into effects. I can go and start applying some effects to my vocalist. You know, however you want to mix the track down, you're doing that on the mixer itself. You can also use the DAW in conjunction. So I've got the tools on my mixer happening, but if I go back to my DAW, I've also got processing in here. So if I pull up my mix a little bit, all of my channels allow me to do inserts, so I can insert, you know, whatever processing I want. I can have EQs, compression, different types of effects, different reverbs, maybe tape saturators, amp emulators, stuff like that that the mixer might not have. So you can get the best of both worlds. You can mix on the channels within the DAW and at the same time on the mixer and have that flow into each other and utilize both processes simultaneously. And then when you've got your mix all dialed in here, all you do is reset your playhead here once you're happy with it. And then with this channel armed to record, I'm going to press record, and then it is just going to re-record our mix onto that channel, and then that will be our final stereo mix down. And then from there we could export that stereo file and send it to mastering, or whatever you want to do with it from that point. But this is a great way to really get an awesome workflow in a recording environment using the TouchMix. It's really versatile. It really gives you a lot of options, a lot of workflow options, and you can use it in sequence with your DAW software and just get a heck of a lot of processing power out of it and really nice workflow. So there you go. I can stop this now, and we'll call that a recording. We'll pretend we let that record it its entire way through. And there you go. And then you've got your finalized file there. I can solo it out and play that back if I want to. And there it is, and it sounds awesome. Okay, whew, that was a lot. I know that was a lot. This was an ambitious topic to try to get through in one sitting, but that's it. We made it to the end. Are there any questions about any of that at this point? I know it was kind of a lot. I know that we got into some complex routing and things like that at the end here, so please feel free if you're still with us out there. Any comments, anything you might have, any concerns, anything that you weren't quite certain on, or you'd like me to reiterate, I'm more than happy to do that at this time. If not, I hope you had as much fun as I did. We really appreciate you coming and checking these out, and I hope you continue to come check them out. It is going to be an ongoing thing that we're going to continue to do. We've got one next Friday. Go ahead and register for that. I believe the link should be up for that now. And that one's going to be all about mixing with groups. So we're going to try to mix up the topics a little bit and tackle different applications and different features of the mixer with each one. And then, you know, we'll do some repeats as well. So if anybody missed anything that's happened, we'll give them another opportunity to get in on all of this. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking now. So if there are no further questions or anything like that, I'll go ahead and close us out. So going once. Going twice.
We do have a couple questions. Hey,
I knew it.
Quick.
Okay, okay.
Real quick.
Totally.
Will there be repeats? I think they're referring to the session.
Yes. Yeah. So we will be running all of the sessions again. Right now, we've got about 6 different topics planned. This is, I think, the 4th one that we've got so far. We'll probably continue to come up with new topics, but we will start to kind of go backwards and redo all of the topics at some point. So all of these topics will be revisited. We will have additional webinars, you know, where we go back through all of these same topics again. Additionally, we're working on building a sort of an on-demand page for all of the webinars, which will only be offered to those who have attended or are registered for webinars. So eventually, you know, you'll be getting follow-up emails for attending this webinar or for attending any other webinars that you either have attended or will be attending, with a link so you can be able to go back and actually view some of those recordings of the other webinars. So yeah, that is something we're going to be offered. That will mainly be offered to registered participants though. But either way, we're going to keep going with these, and we will be cycling back on all the topics at some point. Any others?
Also, I realized that earlier when I posted the link to the training website, I just sent it to all the panelists, so none of the attendees got it. So I have reposted
well, I
it
know
there.
Where it is, so I'm okay.
Yeah, right. So it's there now for anyone who was wondering where it was when I said I posted it earlier. You should see it in the chat window now, so you can use that link to get to our online training for TouchMix.
Very cool. Thanks, Jacob. Anything else? What do you guys got? No? Everyone just wants to get out of here? I get it.
Yeah,
well,
Q&A is pretty clear right now.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, again. I know this went a little long. Thanks for hanging in there with us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was useful to you. I hope they help you out, give you some good information. My mouth is very dry, so I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you, everybody, and we will see you next time.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.